Okay, what I think this needs now is the warping of the eyelid to really start to get the broad strokes all in place. So let's drop down a grid warp and we'll connect that to the source input of the grid warp, the plate. I'm not going to wire it into the rest of the comp just yet, but we'll do that once it's ready. In order to define the area that we want to warp, I'm really only interested in warping the eye here. So we can use draw boundary tool to draw that out just over the eye. There we go. And it dropped it in the wrong area for some reason, but we'll fix that. So I'm going to start from the source and I'll drag this just over her eye and nudge it into place here. And I'm only editing the source grid right now. So let me copy that and paste it to the destination grid. So now if we look at the destination grid, the source and the destination grids are the same. Now I want this to follow along as she moves. So I'm going to use the same strategy that I used for the tentacle here. I'm just going to use the tracker to move this along. So I'll go to the transform tab of the grid warp, and I'll use the link menu to link this translate to the translate of the tracker node. So right click, link to, tracker to, and I want the translation. There we go. Let's look at the source. There it is. So the source is moving along. We'll check the destination. The whole grid warp is being translated. So it will only affect the things that we warp from here. So now we can go to the destination grid and we could start warping it, or if we wanted to, we could go back to this keyframe for this first position of our source, and I'm going to take this opportunity to sort of not move the whole thing, but more position it so that it's a little bit more like the shape of the eye here. So I can get a little bit more intuitive editing of the eye when I start editing it. If I do it this way, I sort of make it follow the contour of the eye just a little bit more. And we'll copy this into the destination also once we get this edited nicely. There we go. So I'm going to, we're only really going to be using this center part much. I'm going to put a little bit more resolution in here. So add a couple cuts there. There we go. And now we'll copy all of these keys to the destination grid. Paste. There we go. So now I think we're ready to start editing this warp. So I'm going to rock through the plate again to make sure that it mostly stays lined up well enough for what I need to do. I'm only going to really be moving these points during this section here, and I think this is lining up well enough for all the stuff I'll want to do. Okay, good. So let's start adding some keyframes. What I'm going to do first is I'm actually going to create keyframes for when the thing ends. So after this puppy goes away, I'm going to create a keyframe right here, let's say, a couple frames after it goes away for all of this just back to the original position. So I'm going to hit the plus key to create a keyframe for, oops, that was on the source. We're going to start creating destination animation. So let's go to the source warped. And now we're editing the destination grid, and we'll create a keyframe for that end frame. And let's go back to the beginning and create a keyframe on our first frame so that we have that as well. So I'm going to create a key just to have two non-moving things at the basic rest position of the thing. So now I can get back to where it was at the very beginning. At the very end, I can go back to that. And then at the very beginning, I have that frame as well. So let's start making this look gross. I'm going to go forward, and we can start warping this ever so slightly here to make it look a little more gross. Got a view at the grid warp. And now let's wire this in to our comp so we can see it all in context. And we'll use that keyframe all the way until the tentacle really starts going crazy. We have auto key turned on, so everything we do here will automatically create a key. And then for this little part, when the tentacle wiggles around and goes in there, let's make this really gross. It really kind of, each time the tentacle wiggles, it really kind of pops out. So we'll create one keyframe here, just not doing much. Then when it wiggles, we'll really push the warp. There we go. And now this keyframe, remember we set at the very beginning, but it puts it back to neutral, so there's no warping happening from here forward. There we go. So I think we got our warp in. Let's move on to sweetening the color and the grain and the defocus and everything else.